So she just criticized herself. The Republicans do have oversight, but they do it the right way. Appropriate oversight done appropriately. That's what Brian Williams was referring to last night at that dinner. But here's the other thing, getting back to the Brooklyn Bridge issue. Senator Clinton standing here telling you that she supported all of that. The record is, in 2005, she stood next to Harry Reid and her colleagues in the United States Senate who said, we're in the process, or actually I think they said, we killed the Patriot Act. And then, of course, they couldn't get their way. 4 Republicans went back to being Republicans, and in March, she voted for it. I asked people at home, check the record. She voted against it. And in central New York, she stood up and said President Bush's explanations of the NSA wiretapping were far-fetched and bizarre. They caught the terrorists coming into Lackawanna. They saved the Brooklyn Bridge. They're currently still working. And this Washington talk, that's what it is, Washington talk about the FISA court and doing it legally. Bill Clinton had the Echelon program. No one said a word.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. And now we go back to our Sandra Inbell.
Thank you, Dominic. Senator Clinton, there's a scandal grabbing headlines in recent days surrounding the indiscretions of former Republican Congressman Mark Foley. Do you think it's fair for Democrats to make that a campaign issue this fall?
Well, I think this is a matter for voters, and voters are following it because it is of great concern. Obviously, we care about what happens to our young people, our teenagers. The Internet and people preying on young people through the Internet is one of the biggest new challenges that we face.
What do you think, as a mother and a senator? Well,
as a mother, I am deeply concerned that such behavior would be going on. But there now is an investigation. It is bipartisan. They seem to be proceeding expeditiously, and I hope they come up with some answers.
Who do you think should be accountable?
I also wanted to respond because my opponent keeps saying this. I voted for the Patriot Act first. Then I did join with a bipartisan group of senators to try to make it a little better. And the main issue for me in those negotiations was to try to get into the Patriot Act risk-based funding for New York, because I think the funding for Homeland Security should follow the threat. So yes, we did hold it up, and we did try to get risk-based funding into the Patriot Act. You know, we made a few changes. We didn't get that. We still don't have that, unfortunately. And then I voted for the Patriot Act again.
All right, just to follow up on my question, my initial question, actually, who do you think should be held accountable for this scandal? I know you said there's an investigation going on right now, but many critics are saying that House Speaker Dennis Hastert should resign. Do you feel the same?
You know, this is an ongoing investigation. I'm going to let the investigation go forward. It's in the other House of Congress, and I'm going to just see how it unfolds, and clearly voters will factor that into their decision as well.
Would you be comfortable if you had a teenager in the PAGE program right now?
You know, I am in the Senate. We run the PAGE program differently, and I hope that changes are made because it's a wonderful program, and I'm very proud of the young people who participate in it. But obviously, you know, the conduct that we now know about was reprehensible, and I hope that they get to the bottom of who knew what when.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Spencer, exactly what she was talking about. There seems to be different accounts of who knew what when. Did Republicans from Tom Reynolds, the congressman here in New York, to Speaker Hastert, did they do enough to protect this page?
You know, Sandra, that you know, when you ask the question who's responsible, you know, the man personally, Mark Foley, is responsible. That's who's responsible. You know, just like, you know, who's responsible for, you know.
But Mr. Spencer, other Republicans knew.
No,
his colleagues knew about it as well. So who should be held accountable here? Shouldn't be.
Mark Foley should be held accountable. But if there's an.
Did others do enough though to protect this page?
On this night in Rochester and Sandra, do I know? There's an investigation going on. I think everyone should keep their powder dry. Let the investigation and the process work. Stop making judgments across the board about other congressmen and women and what they did and what they didn't do. And again, I've said this before September 11th. When nonsense like this is going on, it needs to be addressed. It needs to be investigated for the integrity of government. But you know, Sandra, right now, we're at war. We're at war. We have people trying to kill us. Senator Clinton's flailing around with major issues in Washington and Congress people, and that's what they should be dealing with. We can deal with these things. But to see the amount of press all over the nation about this aberrant act, yes, he should be dealt with and investigated. But we have a big country here. We have complex problems. In New York, we have no jobs and high taxes. That's what I want to talk about. That behavior will take care of itself. People will take care of it. They'll investigate it, and whoever's responsible will be held accountable.
Thank you.
Dominic, I just have to add, I do not think that the allegations, and particularly the context of adults using the internet to prey on susceptible teenagers, is nonsense. It's a serious problem, and we need to get to the bottom of it.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Spencer.
There goes that. Gotta let me know when they're through. There goes that Washington talk again. She's interpreting what I called nonsense. What I called nonsense was, as a nation, everyone all of a sudden consumed with that and how it affects other people's election, whether it's Tom Reynolds or other people. That's the nonsense I'm talking about. Obviously, you know, internet, whatever it is a serious problem.
Okay.
So there's the Democratic way again of trying to spin things in the Washington talk, which I resent.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. And now we turn to Jim Maroney. Jim?
Mr. Spencer, the popular thing in this election cycle has been to promote alternative fuels. And after 8 years in a very oil-friendly administration, when we've seen record fuel prices, record fuel company profits, that's a very easy admission to make, that we are addicted to oil. And yet, as the election approaches, here we have a wonderful 25 to 50 cent decline in gasoline prices at the pump, which leads voters to think, well, really, nothing is going to change. How would you make things change, and how would you convince voters that things could be different?
Well, again, Jim, what I would say to an issue like that is, here's another example of things not moving forward in Washington, whether it's protecting our borders for decades, whether it's health care, whether it's Social Security. What goes on in Washington is the constant churn in the soundbite, and nothing gets done, including an energy policy. But you can go back for 2 decades. I'm not blaming President Bush. I'm not blaming President Clinton. I'm blaming all of us as a nation. No one has come together in the Senate and the Congress in Washington. It seems nothing gets done.